We are going to go on to more of inside linebackers here. The first one is going to be third-year player for the Saints, Pete Werner. So he had been a second-round pick out of Ohio State. Played in 15 games, started about half of them his rookie year. Injury bug hit him too this past year, like we had just mentioned with Aziz, where he only played in 12 games, started 11 of them, but he still improved upon his numbers. He had 80 combined tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, 3 pass deflections, some forced fumbles. Demario Davis, I believe his contract had just gotten restructured, so he's going to be around there anyway. He's sort of that old workhorse in the middle, but Demario is the oldest starting linebacker in the NFL last year. If you look at middle linebackers across the board, 34 years old. Reason I bring that up, these guys don't last forever. At some point, their bodies wear out on them. They slow down a bit. They don't keep up. Not saying that'll be this year, but it certainly could be. We saw some of that slow down last year from Demario Davis towards the end of the season. And Pete Werner feels like the next guy up. They had drafted a guy like Zach Bond, who just didn't pan out the year before him. Pete Werner showed a lot this past year, and it kind of feels like they're going to be moving forward with him as their middle linebacker of the future. Is that the vibe you're getting?
It is. It is the vibe I was getting, especially when he started the year last year. Played, I thought, exceptionally well and appeared to have really solidified his place on that defense. Obviously later in the year he had the injury and lost a little bit of time on the field. But again, it's all about these guys just being able to stay healthy. The best ability is availability, right? We've said it before.
Yep.
And but his tackle numbers looked good. I was a little concerned with his missed tackle percentage. But overall it wasn't anything crazy. And I think that, the tackle numbers, I think he had like around 67 tackles. Those look good. You'd like to see him be able to get to the quarterback. We'll see what the Saints do and how they use him this year. If they're able to be a little bit more creative with him, I think that would be great. But otherwise, I think the floor is there for him. And if you can acquire him cheap enough, the thing is, he doesn't feel like a secret to the IDP community anymore.
Yeah.
He's a pretty well-known commodity, and especially with being just 24 years old. He should be one of those guys you probably have to pay a little bit more for. But again, if you can acquire him, maybe from somebody who just doesn't really know like what they have, or just by means of the great thing about IDP is unless you're playing in an all IDP league, is you can always use some offensive power to acquire, quite frankly, anybody you want in IDP, generally speaking. So if you pair him with the right people and you get him in a good trade, definitely should be excited about that.
So next group of sticking with those middle linebackers, but the next group of linebackers we're talking about are all going to be second year guys. So guys that either showed a lot or just showed those flashes to start the year. And first one up is Troy Andersen. He is a linebacker for the Atlanta Falcons. He was out of Montana State in the second round. Super athletic, even by NFL standards. When you look at relative athletic score, the guy was just off the charts for linebackers. And he did all right. He played in all 17 games, started 5, 40 solos, 29 assists, 3 tackles for a loss. He had some nice games in there when he was filling in for injured guys. How you feeling about Troy Anderson's spot going forward? Do you think he secures a starting spot with,
I
especially Rashaan Evans, I believe, is a free agent this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think this could be the year where we actually find out, right? If he's going to be what we think he could be, or if the Falcons are just going to be searching for somebody for the middle in the next draft or two. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. I agree with you. I like him as an athletic profile. Liked his skill set. Definitely like the opportunity that he should have in Atlanta. With them not really having a whole lot of people outside of him. I mean, Lorenzo Carter, he's getting up there in age. Occasionally he'll break out and make some good plays week to week. Rashaan Evans, he could be competitive with him in the middle of the field, but Troy Andersen should be the go-to guy on that defense this year. And we'll just see what he does with it.
Next guy up played even less than Troy did. He didn't start any games, but he did play in all 17. We talked about the Eagles a little bit earlier. This is Nakobe Dean, potential first-round pick leading up to the draft, everyone thought, and then he fell to the third round. By and large, it felt like due to injury concerns. He only had 13 tackles and a tackle for a loss on the season, but when he played, granted it was mostly in garbage time, Nakobe Dean showed why he had that first round grade by a lot of people. The guy was just a beast on the field. His PFF ratings were great. And I do think that they still have a steal. Now, this could be tampered if TJ Edwards, Kazir White, Bobby Wagner, one of these other veterans out there, and there's a lot of them. Levante David's another name that could come in and take a spot. But I really like what they have with Nakobe Dean, and given the fact that they are going to have some salary cap things to figure out, especially on the offensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, Jalen Hurts' contract, I'm really excited still for Nakobe Dean. How you feeling about him? You muted yourself still. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I think Nakobe Dean could see an opportunity by way of, like we talked about earlier, that cap space issue that they're having. Will they commit money elsewhere, and will they go with the rookie, second year, I should say, linebacker who is on a rookie contract? And I think that he performed well enough to give the Eagles the confidence to be able to do that, which for the Eagles, they have to be happy with, right? So
yeah.
I definitely think that he could take that step this year. I think if he gets that opportunity, we'll see what they do in the draft. We'll see what they do in free agency. I don't think they should draft another linebacker. But like to your point, there are a lot of free agent linebackers right now who could find new homes, and it could be a crazy offseason and anything could change. But if he's the starting linebacker going into week 1, I'm feeling pretty good about that.
And I even like him more than the next guy we have here, Christian Harris, linebacker for the Houston Texans. He played more in terms of starting. He started 11 games out of the 12 he was in. 74 combined tackles, 6 tackles for a loss, a sack, some pass deflections. He showed nicely. He showed nice in college too in Alabama there. He was Alabama. Get my guys confused with LSU with the next one. But I'm more excited about Nakobe Dean just because he has a better defense around him. He was able to learn from, I think, better defensive minds, there than whatever the mess the Houston Texans were doing. So how do you feel sort of about Christian Harris in general and then compared to Nakobe Dean?
Yeah, it's funny because on one hand you could say, for instance, and we'll get to some other guys. I'll just throw his name out. We'll get to him and we'll talk about him in detail. But Jalen Petrie was a guy whose production was really high, and it's like, was it because there's just no one else, and maybe Christian Harris kind of gets that same benefit? I'm not really sure. It's hard to say if that's a good situation or a bad situation, but at the end of the season, you can usually tell by how productive they were if it was good or bad. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both. We talked earlier about the Giants and their situation, how one player helping another, and the better defenses around you, the more you may benefit from that. And that is true to some degree for sure. I'm not sure. I think it's probably closer to 50-50 split than you think, but I think I would probably give the edge to Nakobe Dean as long as he is the absolute starter going into week 1. I think that would be the key. If he's in any kind of splitting snaps on that defense, or the other thing is like, how does he fit in that defense? What direction's that defense going to go? That's another interesting dynamic that I don't really feel as much concern about with Christian Harris. I think with his style of play, he's just more of a natural fit. But we'll see what both players do with it this year.